Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another story time. Today we have a story about music and family and learning a new skill and being scared. It's called Hana Hashimoto, 6th Violin. It's written by Chieri Uegaki and illustrated by Kin Lang. And Chieri says that this book was written and inspired about and by her grandfathers. The publisher is Kids Can Press, and it is read aloud with permission from Access Copyright on behalf of Kids Can Press. When Hana Hashimoto announced that she had signed up for the talent show and that she would be playing the violin, her brothers nearly fell out of the tree. "That's just loopy," said Kenji. "You're still a beginner." "Stop kidding," said Koji. "You can barely play a note." "It's a talent show, Hana. You'd be a disaster." Hana squared her shoulders and took her violin and bow inside, leaving her brothers laughing like monkeys in the tree. She pulled at the strings, letting them twang. It was true that she was still a beginner. She had only been to 3 lessons. The first time Hana had a real violin had been that summer, when visiting her grandfather in Japan. Long, long ago, her grandfather had been part of a great symphony orchestra in Kyoto. Oji-chan had been second violin and once played in front of the imperial family. Oji-chan played every morning. From his study, the clear, bright notes would drift upstairs through the shoji screen doors where Hana slept on sweet-smelling tatami mats and coax her awake as gently as sunshine. Oji-chan usually played classical pieces by Mozart or Mendelssohn or Bach. But in the indigo evenings, while Hana and her brothers ate ice cream and oranges, Oji-chan would sit at the veranda and play requests. Hana always asked for a song about a crow cawing for her 7 chicks. Whenever Oji-chan played it, Hana would feel a shiver of happy sadness ripple through her. Oji-chan didn't just play songs. He could also make his violin chirp like the crickets Hana tried to find in the tall grasses. He could pluck the strings to mimic the sound of raindrops on the oil paper umbrella Hana twirled under during summer storms. And when the fireflies emerged at twilight, Oji-chan could compose a melody that seemed to make them dance higher and glow brighter than ever before. At the end of each day, as Hana lay with her head resting on a cool buckwheat pillow, Oji-chan would play a lullaby so soothing that sleep would fall over her like a blanket. On their last day together, Hana told Oji-chan that she wanted to learn to play the violin. And when Hana got home, her parents agreed that she could. Now Hana was practicing not just for lessons, but for the talent show, too. Hana practiced every day, just like Oji-chan. And every day, her brothers fled the house with covered ears, complaining about the horrible noise she practiced in front of her parents, who listened with care while they washed and dried the dishes. She practiced in front of her dog Jojo, who cocked his head and sometimes growled at the strange sounds Hana made. And she practiced on her own in front of an old photo of Oji-chan from his symphony days. Alone, Hana could pretend that she was performing in front of an audience so appreciative they called for encore after encore. The day of the talent show arrived, and the school auditorium thrummed with excitement. Backstage, Hana waited with a walloping heart. A dozen acts, including 5 other violinists, had already gone before her. Finally, Hana heard the master of ceremonies call her name. As Hana walked onto the stage, her violin tucked under her arm and bow gripped tight in her hand, an oceanic roar filled her ears. Things seemed to be moving in slow motion, and for one dizzy moment Hana thought, Kenji and Koji were right. This is going to be a disaster. She wished she could turn into a grain of rice and disappear into a crack between the floorboards. She could hardly see with the spotlight in her eyes. Yet as Hana looked out into the audience, certain faces appeared to her as through a telescopic lens. She could see her brothers melting into their seats. She saw her best friend Jas giving her 2 thumbs up, and there her smiling mother and her father, camera in hand. Hana held a breath and then ballooned her cheeks before letting it out. With a whoosh, the roaring in her ears receded. Then as everyone seemed to disappear beyond the light shining down on her like a moonbeam, she remembered. Gambaru no yo, Hana-chan. Do your best, her grandfather had told her. Oji-chan would be cheering her. Hana swallowed her nerves like medicine and leaned towards the microphone. She would just do her best. This is the sound of a mother crow calling her chicks, she said. She placed the violin under her chin, held her bow in position, and played 3 raw, squawky notes. This is the sound of my neighbor's cat at night. She dragged the bow across the strings, and the violin yowled in loud protest. This is the sound of rain on a paper umbrella. Hana plucked the strings for a soothing plump, plump, plump. As Hana continued to play all the special sounds she had practiced, the air around her came alive with buzzing bees and lowing cows and squeaking mice and croaking frogs. Finally, as the last sound effect trailed away, Hana tucked her bow and violin under her arm. And that, she said to the audience, is how I play the violin. Then she took a great big bow. Later, after dinner, Kenji surprised Hana by asking for an encore. Make that funny cow sound again, he said. Then Koji said, make that crazy cat sound too. So Hana did. And when her mother and father and brothers all laughed, she happily played her sounds again. Perhaps next year, Hana would be able to perform one of Oji-chan's favorite pieces. But for now, Hana played a little melody she had been practicing, remembered from nights lit by dancing fireflies. She imagined that the notes would drift out through the window, past the bright rabbit moon and beyond, and Oji-chan would hear them and smile. And that's the story.